Nice to be there.
Yes, well, y'all got staff conference. It should only take 2 or 3 hours. To read that.
Okay.
I have a feeling I'll be able to do something soon.
Yes.
I know. Yeah, pretty much. She's this here in the road for a couple of days, so I'll visit college. Careful with what's his face. A couple of days. Sweet pea is all.
Good evening, everyone. It's 4 o'clock. It's time to call the Board of Commissioners work session into order. I want to thank the public for being here and those that have tuned in online. I'd like to get the roll call, is it?
Mayor Harper.
Here.
Commissioner Oliver.
Here.
Commissioner Dillahunt.
Here.
Commissioner LaPickle.
Here.
All right, Commissioner Spiegler, it's her birthday today, so when you see her, wish her happy birthday. You'll excuse her from the meeting. And Commissioner Cooper is not feeling well, he's under the weather. Hopefully he has a speedy recovery, but I'm just excuse him from the meeting as well. So we've got an agenda to approve. Can I get a motion to approve the items of the agenda tonight? Got a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, have the same right. We're going to move on to the first item for discussion and consideration, which is the Piedmont Triad Regional Council 2024 case study results.
We'll ask Cooper to do the intros here.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. David Hill, Piedmont Regional Council. He's going to do the presentation in regards to the study. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm going to go over in perhaps 40 minutes to 45 minutes, about 6 months worth of work. So I'm going to go through a PowerPoint slide. The first slide we're going to take a look at are snapshots of what the workforce looked like at the beginning of the study. And then from there, we're going to go into taking a look at some of the options that we've looked at, some of the findings, some of the recommendations. Qualified regional council, that's the council of government and influence and safety. So you might ask yourself, why am I? We are a group of retired local government employees who work with and through the Piedmont Triad Regional Council of Government. And we work all across the state to provide human resource services. So, expectations of the study. So, the primary focus of the study is to take a look at your workforce, a range of salaries, but more importantly, take a look at those local governments who are competitors of yours. And then for us to determine within this identified local market, where is the best position of Beaufort to be at that best competitive position to attract and retain employees. So the study, 6 months worth of work on this one slide. We start off by holding employee meetings. We met with department directors. Employees had an opportunity of a 12-page questionnaire to provide to us all of the information relevant to the position that they work in. It's 12 pages of each employee in their own words telling us everything that they do. And then just a collection of data, not only from Beaufort, but from all of those other local governments that we took a look at, and anywhere else that we could find relevant data to your study. So we'll go through that, we'll make initial findings, initial recommendations, we'll come back to the meetings, do those initial recommendations and findings, provided some more defined recommendations, which then were considered. And then I'm coming to you tonight with a couple of those recommendations that we took a look at. So workforce analysis, the bell curve, standard deviation, assuming that the sample size is large enough, and assuming that you have a mature workforce, all of the findings that I should be looking at should resemble standard deviations, should resemble the bell curve. My definition of a mature workforce is that you have an average years of employment between 8 and 10 years. And again, if you have a mature workforce, if the sample size is large enough, whatever element of the workforce I'm going to be looking at, the distribution should look just like that. And in a mature workforce, I should be able to find about 2/3 of your employees in the middle of 1/3 of that bell curve. So the very first thing I take a look at is, now remember, this is from the very beginning of your study. This is a snapshot, just a point in time. What does the workforce look like? The very first thing I take a look at is years of employment. And again, my definition of a mature workforce, between 8 and 10 years, you have an average years of employment of a little over 7.5. So then I take a look, each one of these bars represents those employees who came to work for you in each of those calendar years, who are still working for you. Not known by this chart are the number of employees who came to work for you in each of these years. If we follow these two smallest bars for the next 3 to 5 years, I can tell you this from just historical data and experience, those two bars are going to look like these bars. These two bars in the next 3 to 5 years will look just like these bars. You will not retain those employees. And that's just based on historical data. But what this also represents is recruitment and retention. So you're bringing them to work, but as the years pass, you lose more and more employees. Down here in the bottom left, you've got right at 30% of your employees who've been with you less than 2 years. You've got 50% of your employees who've been with you less than 5 years. So even though you've got an average years of employment of a little over 7.5 years, over half of your employees have been with you less than 5 years. And I should have apologized. I cannot recreate a bell curve. So that very good looking bell curve is on the slide before that. I can't recreate those. The best I can do is get close to maybe like a St. Louis Orange or something. This bell curve of St. Louis Orange represents a 20-year career. So you do not have any employees who've been with you more than 2 years. You have one that came to work for you in 2005. But look, before. This next one, it takes a look at how long have employees been in their current position. So the first chart, how long have they been working for? This chart, how long have they been in their current position? Typically, this chart is a mirror of the first chart. And as you can see, it pretty well represents or mirrors the first chart. But you've got over 45% of your employees have been in their current position less than 2 years. Almost 68% of them have been in the position less than 5 years. That's not a bad thing. Promotional opportunities, advancement opportunities. So I may have been here for 5 years, but this last year was promoted to my next run on the ladder. I then would show up as being in my position for a very short period of time. Okay. Okay, this is the most important one, and I'll refer back to this slide a number of times as we get into the recommendations. This is a look at where employee salaries are in relation to their pay grade range. Now, the pay grade range has a hiring rate, has a minimum salary for that range, midpoint salary for that range, maximum salary for that range. So what this does in 2% increments is plot where employee salaries are along their pay grade range. Now, if you take into consideration the first chart and the second chart, the highest bars are along the left side. So I would assume that when I got to this slide, most of the high bars would be over here because employees haven't been with you long enough for their salaries to advance. So when I look at this chart, the very first interpretation of that is your salary grade ranges are not competitive to the market and you have to bring employees to work at higher salaries. Or your pay grade ranges are competitive, but you've got a very good salary administration program where you're able to attract employees and bring them to work at salaries further up in the grade range. So this, as you can see, comes as about as close as you can get to the bell curve, as close as you can get to standard deviation. There are very few local governments in the state of North Carolina who have charts that look like this. Usually when I get to this chart, all the high bars are right over here. And that represents salary compression. You do not have a significant salary compression issue. But I will come back to this chart, refer back to this chart as we go through. So who is the market? Who did we compare each of your positions to? So here are those local governments. And for the most part, those are geographically close local governments. When I begin to study, the first thing I do is I go to Google Maps, I locate where I'm going to be working, I take a look at a 30-minute drive, a 45-minute drive, and an hour's drive. I do that because greater than 90% of your employees will not move to another part of the state or they have to go work for another local government. Now, they may have a spouse that takes a job in Asheville, and they move to Buncombe County and go to work in the city of Asheville County. Greater than 90% of local government employees will not move just to go to work for another local government. Managers will, department directors will, technical folks will. Greater than 90% of the workforce have not. So this is the market. only going to show 3 of these kinds of slides. But each one of your positions, each one of your classifications has a chart very similar to these. And what this is the first we're going to take a look at is police officers. So then everything above the blue line is the market. So for each one of these local governments in this particular classification, what's the pay grade range that they have that position in? So here I'm looking at the minimum salary, the midpoint, the maximum. When I get over here to this column, this is how much are they actually paying employees who are in this particular position. And then take a look at the range. The range is measuring from the minimum to the maximum of that pay grade range. Column that's titled CR stands for comp ratio. That's just a measurement of where is my salary in relation to the midpoint. The midpoint really is not the right term to use for that middle salary of that salary grade range. That's the market rate. That's the market value. That's the highest point of that bell curve. That everybody calls it the middle. But it's really the market. This is the salary. This is where you should be able to find that salary of those employees who've been in their position that 8 to 10 year period of time. And comp ratio there is just a measurement of where is my salary in relation to the midpoint. And if I have a comp ratio of 1.00, that means my salary is 100% at midpoint. My salary is at midpoint. This is not a good position to talk about comp ratio because most of the employees in this particular position don't stay in that position long enough for their salaries to get to midpoint. They're usually in that position for a very short period of time, and then hopefully have that opportunity to move to this officer 2, 3, 4, or whatever the next position is in the organization. Percent above minimum is just another way that I take a look at salaries. Where is that salary as a percent above the minimum salaries we pay for the range? Immediately below the blue line is both. So, the position of police officer currently in grade 9, it has a minimum salary of $51,700. Now, on these charts, I am not showing the hiring rate. I'm measuring from the minimum salary to the maximum salary. And when we get to recommendations, I'm going to recommend that you eliminate the hiring rate from your pay plan. The hiring rate is an old strategy from many years ago that a lot of local governments still, not a lot, a relatively small number of local governments still use that. What the hiring rate is an opportunity to bring an employee to work at a salary 5% less than the minimum. And then typically after they've successfully completed their probationary period, they get to move to the minimum salary. This was created back at a time when probationary employees in the state of North Carolina were not eligible for retirement system membership. So it actually was a cost savings to the local government to bring an employee in 5% less than the minimum range. And then they were able to save the 6% or whatever the percentage was at the time for retirement system membership. In today's market, you could go back probably more than 10 years and include the market from over 10 years ago. You cannot be competitive in the market by bringing employees to work at a salary 5% less than what everybody else is paying. So in all of my charts, I'm basically ignoring your hiring rate and measuring from the minimum to the maximum. Right below where you are with this particular position is the average and the median on the 50th percentile of the market data. So then I began to measure, where is your pay grade range? And in these studies, we spend probably 85% of our time focused on the positions without regard to individual employees. Spending most of our time collecting data, analyzing the data, comparing, working with, comparing again and again and again, to try to determine where in the market is the best pay grade for this position to be in. So currently, you've got a minimum of 51.7. The minimum of the average salary average for the market is 49,000. So you are 5.5% above the average minimum of everybody else. You are 2% above the median of 50%. So when I look at that, I come over to this column that's titled 3%. There's where I'm looking at the current data and projecting with this current data on or shortly after July 1st, the beginning of the next fiscal year, it's going to increase 3%. It's probably going to be closer to 2.5, but for today's purposes, I'm saying this data is going to increase about 3%. So that's what really these two numbers over here. So then when I look at this, even if the market increases 3%, you're still going to have an entry level salary greater than where the market probably will be. So I'm looking at grade, this position is in grade 9. My recommendation is to leave that position in grade 9, but of course eliminate the higher grade. Brand new officer will come to work at minimum 51.7, not 5% less than. And Chief, I don't know what a typical entry level salary for an officer is, just right out of school. Would that be 51.7?
Yes, sir.
So how long has it been that you brought an officer, a brand new officer to work at that 5% level? So again, I'm taking a look at the position, 85% of my time is spent on the position. Then I come over this column. Your average police officer, 60,700 is that average salary. The average for this market is 52.8. Median is 52.2. So if I look at those numbers, your police officer on average is making right at 15% more than an officer in the market. Now again, that's just for this particular position. This is not for sergeant, this is not for captain, this is not for chief, this is for that particular position. Now, I'm not going to spend as much time on the next two slides as I did this one, explaining everything. But the next one is firefighter. Your minimum is 49.2. You're 3.5% above the average of the market, and 6.8% above the median of the market.
You said above, isn't it below?
Say again, sir.
It's below, not above.
Thank you.
Right side.
But that's salary, I'm talking about position. So the position, pay grade assigned to this position is 3.5% greater than the market. Or 6.8% greater than the market. Now, let me go on the far right side, if I'm looking at salary. Your average salary for a firefighter here is 50,900, which is 3.3% less than the average market of 52%. So again, when I take a look at all this data, and even projecting a 3% increase in the current data, that's going to push the market up to be still a little below where we already are. So again, my recommendation is this position is currently grade A, that it remain. Next one is public works technicians. But again, for this particular position, currently in grade 3, minimum of 38.5. Average for the market is 39, so we're 1.1% below. Assuming a 3% growth in the market data, that's going to move that minimum up to about 40,000. So for this particular position, my recommendation is to increase it 1 grade from grade 3 to grade 4. When you look at salary, your average salary for this particular classification is 8.3% below the average of the market. And 7.4% below the median. So we're just going to look at those three just to give you an example of what your positions look like compared to the market. Every one of your positions has a worksheet that looks very similar to those things. This is from all of that data that I used primarily this data to make recommendations on what pay grade these positions should be. So when I took a look at all of the positions, and I looked at the pay grade ranges, on average, your pay grade ranges are 0.5% above. When I took a look at salaries, comparing all of your salaries to all of the salaries in the market, your salaries are 2.7% above the average salaries from those salaries. It shows you the hiring rate. This hiring rate, as I said before, is 5% less than minimum. And you have a range of 55% measured from hiring rate to maximum. You've got a differential of 5%. What that means is that we're looking at the minimum, we're looking at the maximum salary for a range. The next highest grade is 5% greater than the longest. So you've got a very excellent standard 5% differential from grade to the next. Got an excellent standard 55% range, minimum, higher grade, maximum. My recommendation is to eliminate the hiring rate, leave the pay ranges like it is. So this is the recommended pay plan by knocking off hiring rate, beginning with the minimum. Your range was reduced from 55% to 50%. That doesn't have anything to do with it. That does not affect anything that you do. So a standard 50%, standard 5% difference. Patients is consider adopting the pay plan that appears on slide 17. With this one. Number 2 recommendation for consideration would be to assign each position to the pay grade that's supported by the market. This officer currently grade 9 stays in 9, 5, 5, 8 stays in 8, on the board's definition for grade 3, we went to grade 4. So the second bullet is saying, all new positions based on comparisons to the market for those similar positions. I'm assigning or making recommendations for pay grades based strictly on that comparison to the market. The third bullet gets to individual employee salary. Here is where I'm going to make a recommendation for consideration of 2 of the several options that we took a look at. So if we go back to that third bell curve slide where we took a look at that distribution of employee salaries, I did not want to come back to management with a recommendation that would disturb the salary distribution that you already have in place. Methodology, the processes and procedures, technology to do that distribution. I do not want to make any kind of recommendation that would disturb that. My recommendations are, however, based on and focus on years of service, how long each of those employees have been working for you. I then use that comp ratio model to show me where in the pay grade range their salary should be based on years of service. Then the second one is an option that takes a look at their time and position, their years of service, and gives equal weight to both of those 2. Again, the example, I may have been employed here for 5 or 10 years. A year ago, I took a promotion to that position. So if I'm looking at the years of service, I've got 10 years. We're looking at time and position. So that operational model that we're looking at next is going to focus on years of service first. And then the second one is going to be an equal weight of time and position and years of service. So this comparison, it's just a salary administration term. The position of salaries to the market. It's used in local government, it's used in private sector. It's just a standard methodology calculating and determining how competitive salaries are to the market. And again, in the bell curve, the market is that highest point in the bell curve. So this population model is measuring where is my salary in relation to the market. So this is what it looks like. And remember at the very beginning, my definition of a mature workforce is the average years of employment. I've set this model up to say that the employee is getting their position of 10. Service. So that's what so then with that operational model, I apply that to each individual employee salary, which would come off of whatever salary should be. And the implementation cost of that election would be $90,000 salaries. Then on top of that would be an additional approximately 26%, that would be the FICA, the retirement, the 401k, those payroll associated costs. So $90,000 in salaries, 23.6 of the payroll associated costs, total of almost $150,000. Pension impact. Cities. Positions. That's 76.3 salaries. Associated costs. Total about $6,000. It's 6 months. Fish. Still.
Bill, want to thank you for having to bear with, over progress. It is very loud, but, want to appreciate the time that you took to go through this very well. Matter of fact, I understand you did so well, so that was a good job. Would like to see if the commissioners have any questions for you. Okay, that one.
Concerning the two implementation models, where do other places fall in how they use these models? Do some communities tend to favor, certain types of communities tend to favor one over the other?
Say, unfortunately, have most of the employees on that lowest. Next week I will be at the county government as far as here. Policy that no individual salary, so station costs will work up that. So yeah, it's how much to get for. How much they know where they need to buy. You know, how can they get? So to answer your question, the implementation option, most places consider are based on that third child where employee salaries are. And if I'm looking at that and saying that every employee in a position where this is looking at
So you run different models based on the size of the town, or the town flood activity, or even reducing the number of participants. So, I mean, how did we come to that number of municipalities? And if we could run it differently, let's see how that.
you're not different. Want to pick on the two chiefs. The probably thing that the two chiefs would say. Somebody under. So most negotiations, people probably don't share the mission. How many local governments do they pass on their way to working? So most, back to my Google map story, when I take a look at local governments, I try to get a good sampling of all sizes of local government. Just so I can get a good picture of what's most employees belong to go picking up the 10 highest positions. I never would disagree with the employee asking me to do that. That's not fair. So I do not run different models based on the size of staff. Or the size of say charge services that we provide is staffing. Well, we're doing the staffing study, those are the kinds of things that we would do. And doing this kind of study, I'm comparing police officer candidates, firefighter candidates, works candidates. That's the value of the size of the yeah, if I'm doing the staffing study, all of those things that you just talked about would come.
Now, I'm ignorant to this because I'm not familiar with the grades, but are there just different grades here for different positions? And they're grade 3 or grade 4, the police department or the public utilities department, is that we're just basically across the grade? So they're not, they're looking to possibly bring up the grades across the board.
Certain positions.
There's a recommendation for each position. They're not ranked up very
He just pulled that three, but there are some other positions in the study that are recommending grade increases for business salary increase.
But are the grades common across all types of employees?
These grade ranges. You obviously take a look at the market and see what pay grade ranges everybody else has that position. But what pay grade? Chief, what's the next highest position above police officer? Detective. So what pay grade should a detective be in relation to police officer? So those are the kinds of things we take a look at. Employees still have 18-6 pay, that's all page, position description, personnel. In that, we ask them, in addition to what is their job, what do they do? So we're asking them about levels of authority. Do they supervise any employees? If you supervise any employees, what is that employee's name? What is their position? So in that questionnaire, we're getting a lot of information that helps us determine the different level. How high, what level of responsibility do these authorities do they have? And is that a 5% or 1 grade differential between the police officer and detective? Or is that a 3 or 4 grade differential? And that's really duties, responsibilities, authorities, different levels that they have. Well, that's
And if you ran, so based on the two options, if you ran that bell curve for those two options, the bell curve would look the same.
under the operational model.
Running the implementation cost, year of service versus the year of service and the project rate,
That's,
position. Would you ran those based on the recommendations and then gave it the bell curve back? Would that bell curve look exactly?
it would look almost like that,
Almost.
because what I'm doing, I'm not moving anybody that's already above me. So if we went back to that chart. Here's the goal. So all of these employees, those two options would not affect their salaries. Where the movement would occur would be down here. So one of these employees may have been here for 8 years. Their salary actually would come over here.
Yeah, so which of the two would move the most into that bell curve?
If I took the operational model and did not stop it at the 8-year mark. If I continued that operational model to the 20th year, it would reproduce almost that curve right there. And what I'm providing to you this evening is a focus on getting employees to this point right here. And that's this group. This group is already above that model. So this half of the chart would not change. There would be some movement here. If I did a 20-year model, distribution would look practically just like that. But that's 116,000, 96,000 would double.
So following up on that, if I could, that's the reason why your recommendation only does not go beyond the 8-year point.
Financial is one of them, but in the true sense of salary administration, if my salary is above the market rate, technically,
5 years of service.
yeah. And I would never tell an employee that they're earning more than the value of the position.
Understand.
But technically, if my salary's over here somewhere, I'm earning more than the hourly position. So the focus of those two options
Is the first thing.
is to get people to the market.
A couple other questions. We have 82 employees. What number of employees were polled and included in your data of those 82,
Well,
roughly?
you're still gonna have about 45 employees who would not receive an adjustment.
No, I'm not saying, I'm saying what number of them, what number, we have 82 total employees. Of those 82, roughly, what number of employees does this study cover? It's not 82.
No, the study covers all of them.
All of the employees
Including
had to turn,
managers, et
yeah,
cetera.
everybody had to turn in
Yes.
the, questionnaire
Yes.
form that.
At the very beginning of the study.
So this covers all 82.
Every employee.
Yes, sir.
I misunderstood that.
Yes, sir. Everybody was included, Commissioner Arnold.
You do any study, have you done any study? of These are all governmental employee comps. Do you do any, have you done a study versus non-governmental?
Yes.
And what's the answer?
Well, it's difficult to get private sector data. Yes. But through the Bureau of Labor Statistics, through the Employment Security Commission, or whatever they call themselves now, every employer has to provide salary data to those places. You can get some somewhat relevant data from them, but they intentionally put the data in the format that it's almost impossible to identify that private sector employer. So usually with that BLS and state data, you're looking at averages of averages of averages. So, and I give it to you in percentiles. So the answer to your question is yes, we do bring some of that data in wherever it might be helpful or useful. I did not do that here.
Do you have any perception of it?
I do.
Well,
Yes. Depends on the classification. If I were a paramedic, yeah, I'm a police officer here. And I don't know the specifics here, but I can tell you that with some other local governments, police, fire, EMS, have very difficult times competing with the local hospital.
that's my point. But you don't have any empirical data that helps us understand that, or makes us want to pay more to compete with it.
I don't have that as part of your study. I can get that kind of. A couple of years ago, I was doing a study for your neighbor. Not Morehead City, Havelock. And their biggest competitor was the police, private police security. And they were doing a lot of private sector construction work. And we were able to get a lot of good data from employees because most of the employees in Havelock had been approached by most of the private sector employers, so they know, the employees knew how much they were being offered. And we used that as part of their study.
And the data that you have, how up to date is the data? So if I'm looking at Havelock here, this is current Havelock by 2024.
This is, October, November, that.
24, pretty current.
Any further questions for Mr. Hill? Barbara, would you like to add anything?
No, we just, looking for the board to help us decide which option we're gonna go with. We made the 2 recommendations, and that way the plan is to implement it in July. The changes.
We'll be talking about this during the budget process.
Yes,
And we'll have a cost analysis for either option.
So we'll review this during the budget And then.
Yeah,
at
this
some
is
point-
just an introduction of the results.
But at some point in time, we'll need to adopt this officially.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We don't need to put this on any agenda next month, we're just gonna continue on through the budget
During
session.
the budget cycle, we'll discuss.
Okay. Mr. Hill, hey, quiet down now.
Yeah.
You wanna go
Right out, 6 minutes early.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is go back to the first line.
We appreciate that, we really do, but, we really appreciate your time, coming through and explaining this to us, I think through this process, it's made it very easy to digest and understand.
Well, Coach Porter knows how to get in touch with me if you need any additional information, additional questions, or anything later. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay, now we're gonna move on to 400 College Street update.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I'll take a stab at this, and I'm gonna link one, other staff to, the town attorney and the town planner, help me through this. Just backtrack a little bit, through documentation that I've been given, it appears that this goes back to December of 23. And that the Historic Preservation Foundation, the picture, that's at that same time in December of 23, I think holds the right of first refusal to the property. In the appendix B to the original agreement, they actually hold the right of first refusal should the property go for sale at some point in time. Last conversation I had with the property. Historic Preservation Foundation, North Carolina Historic Preservation State. Paragraph 10, right of first refusal in case of any contemplated sale of the subject property or any portion thereof, grantee or successor entitled thereto, first refusal as to any bona fide offer of purchase must be given to the foundation or its successors. So, where we've been log jammed, as far as I can tell, is an encroachment agreement for the, I'll call it the second floor porch that extends over the town's sidewalk. We last had a conversation with this, I can't remember if Kyle was in on that phone call or not, but had a three-way phone call conversation between the owner of the Historic Preservation Foundation representatives and the town. And this was somewhere around Thanksgiving. And what it boiled down to was if we were to give the encroachment, if you were to approve the encroachment, what was the renovation timeline for the property? And we were told sometime in 25. And I said that wasn't good enough. Sometime in 25, so I asked if that meant the first quarter of 25, and was told no. So things just kind of stopped at that point, and I'll refer to town attorney as far as, where we are. Do we want to present, do we have an encroachment agreement that we could present? Is it the board's intent that we'd like to present that and grant that encroachment in that block? But that seems to be the stopping point, the sticking point. The only other thing, I'll let Eric gather his thoughts for a second. The only thing this exhibit B with the state, I don't see a sunset in there. In the 5 pages, I don't see a sunset. It just says that they will rehabilitation and maintenance, the grantee covenants and agrees to really rehabilitate the Goddard Hotel according to the terms, conditions, and deadlines of a rehabilitation agreement entered into by the parties and signed by officials of the foundation. Have we seen that?
No, sir, nor are they willing to share it with us.
So this is where we are. We're all concerned. We can see it from here. We'd like to see some movement on that, but I don't know if the encroachment agreement with a sunset clause, I'm not putting legal terms in our legal counsel's mouth, but maybe something along that lines and see what happens. Or I don't don't know through, well, I can't even say through code enforcement because we're really hamstrung, based on, the state's, preservation foundation, and the standing with that group as far as the designation of this being a historic structure. So,
It is not a historic structure.
but,
It is not a historic structure.
okay, well, we can dig in on that point, I guess, but
Yeah, of course, we can proceed however the board directs. My concern was to spend a tremendous amount of time potentially on an encroachment agreement, get it ready to be approved and bringing it to this board and being asked the question, well, when is all this going to be renovated and completed? And your staff and your legal counsel say, well, we don't know and we can't get that information. My recommendation to your staff has been, we will do the encroachment agreement. We did spend some time on it last year, including some insurance issues, which I think we basically worked through, but let's get it all done. I don't want to spend time on encroachment agreement and then 24 months from now, everybody wonder when's that thing going to be started? And I'm thinking some kind of, universal global development agreement, something so the town knows what the milestones are, when this will occur, when the work will start, who is going to be the contractor, when it's going to be completed. And the town has done a lot for this building, in my opinion, and we've accepted, a lot of representations over the years, and you can see things have not changed much. If the board's direction is to go get the encroachment agreement so we can sign it and we'll worry about everything later, so be it. I just, I've got a hesitation that if we get the encroachment agreement done, then we'll have the next set of questions and the next set of delays with really, as we sit here today, no plan, no timeline. I'll speak from, I haven't seen a whole lot. I don't know about
I got a
this
question.
stuff.
So is it a chicken or the egg where they can't proceed with renovations without the encroachment agreement in place?
Well, I think so ultimately, but
That's stated.
Yeah.
They said.
that's what they're saying. That's what the owner is saying. That's why they're not proceeding sometime
As
in
far as
20.
town ordinances, is that the case? Can they proceed with renovation of the property without encroachment?
Well, if you remove the board structure, it'd be I guess it'd be a non-conforming structure, it could be renovated. And not putting words in the planner's mouth.
those are exactly the types of issues that we can't get to the bottom of because the flow of information, I think, is not there. That's a fair statement.
So the applicant has applied to the state of North Carolina for the structure to be considered as placed on the National Register of Historic Places. In order to do so, the state has shared with the applicant that the porch would need to be there, hence because of the architectural feature of it and its existence. So the applicant knows that if they remove it, that the likelihood of them becoming as part of the state or becoming on the National Register is not very likely. So the applicant has also not submitted any paperwork to the State Historic Preservation Office for the National Register now in over 18 months, almost 24 months. So there is not a limit on when they have to submit that information, but that is where they are. So the state is aware that, of course, the state understands that they need the encroachment agreement and basically informed the applicant or the property owner that they needed to have that to be considered. And that's where we are.
So if they make this application, can you put things contingent on it? Because it sounds like we're gonna be going around in circles here. So they need to have this application submitted
to become part of the National Registry. In order to become part of the National Registry, they're saying that they would need to have the structure remain as is. That means we'd have an encroachment agreement keeping the porch there. But is there any guarantee that they would actually be placed on the National Registry, meet their goal?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so if they don't meet their goal, is where I'm at. So we've got to have some kind of contingency. If you're going to do this, we give you this encroachment agreement in order to get on this National Registry, and you don't do it, we're going to have a plan B as to where we go from that point on.
So, okay,
But all of that could be included in a universal development agreement, right? Or not?
Yes, ma'am.
As a condition.
As a
Yes,
condition.
yes, ma'am. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got, and I'll speak frankly, our leverage is the encroachment agreement, because after that, our remedy is back to where we were several years ago, you know, removing the structure through appropriate process, and that's a big step to take for any governmental unit. So, I talk in terms of an agreement. I mean, it could be relatively simple. It could be a letter agreement. I mean, we just need to know what the milestones are and what's the schedule.
Coming
And
back to the mayor's comment, I think we have to have enough adequate and reasonable threat for a deadline, or we're not going to see action,
And
based upon what we've seen thus far.
yes, sir.
And I hate to say it, I mean, I'm not in favor of this, but Plan B, unfortunately, I think has to be, we're gonna go back and affect the condemnation procedure, which itself takes, how long?
It is still a condemned.
Yeah,
I couldn't hear you.
It is still a condemned building.
yeah.
It is, the condemnation has not been removed from the building.
I thought it had been.
No, sir.
The demolition ordinance have been
I can't hear it.
The demolition ordinance have been removed.
So so the condemnation is still in effect?
Yes, sir, it is.
And you have two primary routes that any local government can go. We've got a minimum building standards ordinance, a failure to meet building code. And that's pretty much staff driven. And then you've got some nuisance laws of general applicability, which would be in Superior Court. Either avenue takes notice, an opportunity to be heard, an opportunity to cure. So,
If the condemnation is still in place, our ultimate threat is the demolition.
yes, sir. However you get there, that's ultimately.
I'm not saying that's good, I'm just saying that it appears based on what we've watched and observed, short of a demolition threat, we're not gonna get anything, including an easement.
so if you have a deadline on a demolition threat, then we can argue that along.
How long is the demolition process take typically?
I mean, several months.
Probably
I
90
mean,
days, something like
you got to go out and revisit the initial procedure. How still was it? 3 years? Wasn't John Day here when we suspended the demolition?
It was fall of 21.
We got a cost issue and the thing is demolished. We pay for it. We charge it to the property through the tax system. So there are numerous moving parts. I would say certainly several months. I feel confident we could get it done in about third quarter roughly. But there are just a lot of variables there. We're not talking years.
Well, although the building may not be historic, it represents a piece of history in Beaufort. So I want to clarify that. I am not really happy about the pace in which it's going at all, based on the fact that we had a family who owned it. The pressure on the family had been placed, they had to sell it. And now we're under the impression that when it went to historic preservation, they were going to put a responsible person in that position to actually make good on what the family who could not prior to that. And that has not happened at all. And all we're seeing is a bunch of runoff. And that runaround is gonna cost a huge piece of history if we can't come down to some solution to this, which is my concern. And I don't feel like that this board has been unreasonable by any means and stretch of imagination. Has been very accommodating. I don't understand this contract with, Preservation North Carolina, that's kind of cattywampus for me. They are not forthcoming with any information, I'm not pleased at how they've been operating at all. And you can put that on the record. There you go, write it in there. I am not pleased with how this has been represented at all. And when you do something like this, if you're gonna be an organization that wants to try to preserve history, you should be putting people in place that should be able to do it. And so far, this has been a bust. So we've got a lot riding on this. I still think that if we needed to go ahead and do, and this is pleasure of the board, totally up to them, some form of, what is it, an encroachment agreement, that we can go ahead and apply for this national registry, but if some odd reason this does not fall through, we need to start putting pressure on the attorney to keep up,
I think we have to put a deadline on it,
put a deadline on it.
on it before we're gonna.
Yeah.
Exercise the town's, demolition procedure.
We're talking about through like agreement, some type of agreement.
I think this technically is gonna probably be a notice situation with an agreement attached. Is what I think I think we're gonna end up giving notice to the applicant of an intent to demolish if we can't get an approval to the easement on or before X date.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I think the way I would play it would be town's willing to sign an encroachment agreement, but we're only willing to do so when we have at least the broad outlines of your redevelopment plan. So you get that to
And
us.
the absence of that,
And
the exercise.
you get that to us, and if you can't deliver that, then we've got this other route that nobody wants to go, but we're prepared to go.
And if they just, if they're, if based on this agreement here, or the, well, the contract with, North Carolina Preservation.
Yes.
If this applicant says, you know what, this is a little bit too much, I want to sell it, they want first right of refusal?
Yes. And I believe there's probably some private entities in our community or in our region that would make an offer on that building. I mean, if they made a bona fide offer, would that trigger something if it was enough to attract the attention of the owner? And then therefore force historic preservation's hand if they're gonna buy it or not. We just thinking out
Isn't
loud.
right of first refusal only triggered when there's a contract?
Yes, you need a bona fide offer that would be attractive to the owner. And then if the owner was to say, you know, yes, then it puts historic preservation on the hook to exercise their option or not. And if they choose not, then maybe the property could be conveyed, but then I'll make copies, we'll scan all this and send it to you in email, tomorrow.
But Charlie, I think that first right of refusal is always in those agreements.
Yeah.
That's not unique to this agreement, that's a standard term of their agreement, in my opinion.
My suspicion is it's in there to prohibit a fire sale to someone that would not have the intention of renovating, redeveloping the property. That's usually where you see these things, to make sure that the original intent is carried forward to future owners.
And the duration of covenants is in perpetuity, so once again, standard.
Yeah.
I also think it's nothing on which we can specifically count. I think we have to. They gotta put up a channel for unfortunately. And I do agree with you, the town and the boards have been, extraordinarily positive.
Well, and I will say, Kyle, you can correct me, but when we looked at the demolition ordinance, I mean, the thing was scheduled to be, like, the demolition was gonna start within like 24, 48 hours, as I remember. I mean, we met on a Monday, of course, suspended the ordinance, and the contractor was supposed to be out there like Wednesday. So for what that's
They
worth,
started stripping the building, didn't
The next morning.
was it the next morning?
Which is surprising. You get to the courthouse steps, other than that.
Yes, sir, it does.
So what's your desire today as far as discussion and activity?
they? They should be fine. Encroachment agreements, terms,
I think, the town shows good faith with the encroachment agreement. But we may put it in place, but we do want to see a layout of how this is going to be rehabilitated. By who, what one, and when. When. But I think the town also may want to put in a drop dead of maybe a year from now, or so forth, where if it doesn't happen, this is the intent of the town to proceed with the demolition.
Now, if I can interject, Mayor, I know this is a massively important building and project for the town. I will go so far as to sign the encroachment agreements, hold it in escrow or trust pending all this other stuff, and if it's not done, we can tear it up. I mean, I want the town to facilitate it, not be an obstacle.
What's that?
I put a demolition deadline. It's not done long before such and such. You are noticed. Demolition.
And, a deadline that's not, right, saying 30 days, if we're saying, I would give enough time. Because this is an article also, even a 6-month deadline or an 8-month deadline or nothing, I'd be happy with moving that forward. But I'd like to know when that we have an end here, or that they are well aware that we have an end.
My recommendation would be 12/30 for this year.
We have a building there that firefighters came in after, if there was, right, with it being, no one's allowed in that building right now, not even firefighters to fight a fire in there. I mean, it is in such bad condition that it poses a public safety risk that's hazard. So we've done this for years now. And I think at some point, if they can't do it themselves, they need to sell it. And they need to move on and someone else can come and do this. But I think we do need to kind of move this forward. And, it is part of the town and part of the town's history, but we do need to recognize that it is a public safety hazard to be dealt with. There are ordinances around.
But also acknowledge that with that deadline, if they do start executing the plans and moving along, that we could extend that deadline if we see that they're actively almost keeping to their timeline. I want to, I should have a little bit of flexibility, but we need to get them moving, that's for sure.
If we see a good faith effort, absolutely.
which is what we're really hoping to get.
Right.
Is that good faith effort. We don't want,
These are
to track
reasonable,
them, we want them to get them going.
to me, these are reasonable conditions and reasonable deadlines. And, we're not trying to move any, not trying to push anybody to the resolution.
I'm following what everybody's saying. Execute an easement and put it in escrow against an acceptable development agreement to be executed on or before December 31st of this year. Otherwise, the town's gonna move forward with demolition. Sure.
Okay.
Mayor, I think we've got it, Charlie. You okay? Yeah, good.
Love to hear an update on how that works out.
Everyone last thing. There need to be some type of, remember hearing about some kind of insurance policy in place for that, overhang for that easement?
Yes.
Can you speak to that, and is that already in place? Have they purchased the insurance for that?
I don't know if they've actually purchased it,
Have
but
they provided?
yes, they've provided what we would need to go with the encroachment agreement. So the encroachment agreement allows that deck to overhang the town's property. So that's a real estate matter, but that doesn't solve the liability problem of somebody walking on the sidewalk under the deck, I'll call it, and whatever, the deck collapses, something gets dropped, but, you know, whatever. So the cure there is for the owner to buy liability insurance at the owner's cost and afford to insure the town. And we did get hung up at one point on the form of the policy and the coverage. But we worked through that. I mean, they've got a very reputable insurance company, locally insurance agent. So that's not a problem once we get there. I think we got that ironed out.
And the town will be additionally insured, obviously.
Yes, sir. The details, again, it was just the form of the endorsement and the certificate of insurance, but it's adequate as presented.
And then that's monitored by who in the town? That we have that policy in place yearly?
That's a good question. I mean, it's an annual policy, so it would need to be something that we monitor. And usually those things are structured that we would also get a notice before cancellation or lapse. So
Right, but who monitors what?
how?
I do not, we cannot do that, because I could not go and ask for the money from the
Yeah.
insurance.
We'll probably have to give that some thought.
Do we have any other?
Yeah, I'll get back.
Do we have any other encroachment policies in our town that we monitor for insurance and for, that someone will monitor?
With this.
Like the doctors.
Like the dogs, yeah. That's the one that popped in my head right away.
All right, well, thank you very much on that. We look forward to an update and see how it's all received, but I hope that the current owner will be monthly update, so we can get that disclosed or however progress she has had make it, I can assure you that. So we're gonna pass this on to a new town manager, so we're gonna make sure that he stays up with that as well. Yeah. Welcome over.
Where are you laughing?
He's still here. All right, we get an opportunity to say this piece of history and folks that it'll work out. All right, so now we're gonna move on to George Oswald's request for a 10-year, free slip commitment in the town of Beaufort on the waterfront.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back in the fall, Mr. Aswad came forward and gave you the outline of the term sheet. I sent that out in an email to you. It just has the main bullet points that would be included in a contractual agreement with the town. And what the holdup was National Park Service releasing the prospectus for the concessionaire agreement for ferry service to Cape Lookout National Seashore. That prospectus came out on January 21st, and make a long story short, notification of intent to propose is due in mid-April, with proposals due in mid-May. The way the prospectus is written, the offerer has to operate out of the National Park Service site at Harper's Island with 3 ferry vessels. They may operate out of another location of their choosing. Mr. Aswad chooses Beaufort, as he has for the last upwards of 12 years, provided this service for our waterfront. When you look at the waterfront committee and recommendations out of that group, pretty much from the boardwalk west is seen to be transient and will remain transient. The question is from the boardwalk east, towards Pollock Street, what what will that area look like over the upcoming years. I know there's been some discussion about the various operators in there, tour boats, catamarans, the Crystal Coast Lady, the 3 vessels that operate, Mr. Aswad for the National Park Service, previously for the National Park Service. Those types of vessels, I think, at least at this point, I don't think the waterfront committee has made a stance on, that part of the area being redeveloped for transient purposes. The question is, of course, a commitment for 3 sites for a 10-year period, as that's the contract length of time that any offeror would have to commit to in their prospectus response in May. And Mr. Aswad has proposed $525 per month per vessel over the time with the 5% rent increase annually. I reached out to the current dockmaster trying to get some guidance as far as how that number plays, and I did not get a real response. Response I got was that transient boaters is up and down during the year, and you look at the docks today, and the docks are half, if not the 3/4 empty, and the people that are there are paying a lower rate than the premium payments that are made during peak season. And his only comment was that, when you have somebody that's there for 12 months, you kind of look at that revenue over the term of the year, not just for the ups and downs of high and low seasons. So, representing this information to you today, and hopefully if we move forward, we'd be able to have a contract drawn up by Mr. Aswad's attorney, reviewed by our attorney, and then hopefully in March have it on the agenda for your approval, so that Mr. Aswad can move forward with preparing his documentation in April for submittal in May. Be happy to answer questions.
So he has to have something to meet the prospective requirements for at least 10 years. Did I hear that right?
He in his prospectus offering, he needs to stay, if he's going to operate in order to be permitted, to go to Cape Lookout, he's going to have to put in his prospectus if he's going to operate from somewhere else. It's different than 12, 14 years ago. It was, we competed with Moorhead and were successful. And the way the documents were written with the National Park Service, he was to provide service out of Harkins Island, and he was to provide here. The way the prospectus is written now, he has to provide out of Harper's Island. He may provide out of somewhere else. And they, total disclosure, they say he can operate out of Beaufort, Downs Channel, Atlantic Beach, or Moorhead. His choice, his number one choice, is to operate here. We can debate the merits of 40,000 vessel riders out of Beaufort in calendar year 24, what the effect on our local economy was. You'll hear that it did nothing, you'll hear it did something. But it's still 40,000 visitors that I don't know if they'll be on the sidewalk otherwise. Mm-hmm. Then you have the other factor, we talk about parking, but even if that's 4 people to a car, that's 10,000 cars for probably 6 hours a day. And how much money does that take out of your parking revenue if you follow that stream of thought there? But I think the bottom line is that Mr. Aswad and his associates, at this point in time, their number one choice, if they're going to provide additional service to Cape Lookout, is that it be here, not at one of those other 3 locations.
Okay, I guess I just not understanding if he needs the 10-year agreement here to demonstrate his preference, like they want him
Yes.
to have that.
Yes, it would have to be, wherever he proposes,
Right.
has to be a 10-year commitment. And what he's proposing is that it be 3 vessels. And, and I mentioned in my text message to my email to you that, so far we have not been contacted by any other offerer to operate here. So I don't know what that information does for you, but nobody else did. And in the National Park Service, they gave estimates and such, and they determined that to provide 3 of these ferry vessels that they spec would take $1.2 million for that. And Mr. Aswad's already leveraged with enough vessels, so it's not a cost factor. But for somebody to get into the game, they need to come up with about 1.5, just to satisfy the National Park Service to operate out of Harper's.
And he also, I believe, has the last right of refusal. If he does have a competitive bid, he can meet it, still do it. He still has to have a place.
Yeah.
If he's gonna operate other than Harper, he still has to have an agreement in place to do it.
I just brought up the objectives of the waterfront operations and finance committee, and the only thing remotely related to this is under our bullet point, optimize utilization of the dock by various user groups. And sub-bullet of that is maintain at least the current proportion of slips for commercial uses such as ferries, carousel, and Yucca tours. So that's kind of the most direct
Yes.
thing.
Mhm.
And then we have, the presentation that Ted started on economic impact, which would have included ferries and other things that we just don't have our numbers on. I would have thought that it was more than 40,000 a year.
It's,
Depends who you ask.
Yeah.
yeah, I think there was 80,000 plus. When you look at National Park Service, I mean, they're saying that Cape Lookout attracted 500,000 visitors last year. So, somewhere, I'm not sure. I know Jennifer's here and she could tell us what their company's numbers are. But in the work session, we typically don't do that.
Yeah.
So,
But if you just happen to say it out loud.
oh, she blurted out.
She did.
And so,
What would that number be?
54,000. How many? 54,000. 54,000, probably a little bit more.
What's the size of the boats? Length of the boats? For the slips?
45.
Just like you said, Charlie.
may not exceed 48 feet and 14 feet wide. 35 passenger with a minimum capacity to carry 30. That's for the NPS.
And I agree with you, Charlie. We can debate up and down whether the economics was plus or minus, but 54,000 people in your town is going to make some kind of an impact.
Yes, ma'am. If you,
You took your glasses off, we're making you sweat. Like, going on.
if there's not a huge, outcry against this, staff will move forward and work with Mr. Aswad to prepare something, in more legal form for your consideration, as soon as we get that done.
The one thing I'd mention is, as he has mentioned, is Gallus Channel is coming, online. And I would suggest from the town standpoint, even though that hasn't been, it isn't, the reception center isn't built yet, it's under construction, et cetera. But I would suggest from the town standpoint, that we keep the card of saying, yes, but that we would say that it could be, that possibly be at places other than, the docks. And it could include Gallus Channel. Then if the town makes a decision, and it's in best interest to have the ferry boat be at Gallus Channel, we still met our commitment to Mr. Aswad.
Right, so we wouldn't be making the decision for him. If he thought Gallants was looking better, he could move over there. Is that what
Well,
you're saying?
or if we did. if we the town, I think the town should keep that card personally, capability of saying, well, we think, for whatever reason, parking, Julie, you've got some, we have ways of moving people back and forth. If the town reaches an opinion that we say, yeah, we'll do it, then we can say it could be a Gallus Channel. We keep that card in the town's, pocket for now.
In my conversations with Mr. Aswell, I don't mean to speak for the company, but, there have been indications that as Gallus Channel develops, that there may be other services that, that Mr. Aswell and his company would offer from the Gallus Channel property.
In addition to Beaufort?
In addition to these 3 slips here. He's a businessman looking for next business opportunity.
And that would not impact the financial offerings of $525 a month per vessel.
That would be a new negotiation, with the Gallus Channel property, ownership as far as, what the mooring rates would be.
Alright, so the docks that they are going to be leaving from or utilizing, is the town still taking on the responsibility of repair and?
He is
What kind of
actually,
insurances?
currently, he's, on the cusp of investing $15,000 of safety issues into our docks at his expense and not asking for anything.
Well, I think, again, I'm not going to speak for the thing, but I think he's actually, in his proposal, will accept responsibility for the maintenance of the docks that he's assigned.
True statement.
Is that true?
Yes.
As well as the utility. costs,
Yeah,
Utility-
any utility costs and that's.
Liability insurance and everything.
Everything,
Okay.
and, yeah, and, to speak to the waterfront committee, somewhere in that 10-year period, that area is that basin is gonna be redesigned and redone. And he knows that, we know that, and so there may be some.
But you're going to have to protect yourself for that in the event.
Yes, yes. That may be a time that he test drives Gallus Channel. While that's being,
He stays in Beaufort for 10 years at least.
yes.
Don't take my Christopher's lady away.
This doesn't have to be with Christian.
I know that, I know that, but I don't want anything to go.
This is only the fair.
Well, I understand that, but she knows what I'm talking about. My party boat.
I do think at some point there may be an opportunity for Gallus Channel to be an area where there can be a ferry service to downtown Beaufort. And maybe possibly moving this ferry if the town feels that way. So I do agree that we need to have that in our back pocket. If things change in the way that the town evolves, changes, that we can, and I don't know if we'd be against that, or my conversation is to be against that, and just want to meet in Beaufort. Obviously downtown Beaufort is best, I think, for his business, and I think we probably agree with that. But having that opportunity, having that in our back pocket, I think is worthwhile. I also want to make sure that, like we talked about, that we're at market rates, that this
Yes.
is, we've researched this, that we're not, we're making sure it costs.
I haven't hit any roadblocks in that regard, and it would have, ripple effect on the catamaran, on car sale, and other small tour boat owners there, because come this time next year, our concessionaire is going to be leveraging those rates on those individuals, because those are docks that are included under the concessionaire, unless we not wrong. It does appear that this.
I think we have to, I think you have to look into that a little bit more. I don't know, because I'm not in that business anymore. But I think you have to dig that a little, I think you need to satisfy yourself that utilities, maintenance, insurance, and $6,300 for a year is a plus a 5% inflation is a fair number.
Yeah.
It's $17 a day.
It's $15.75 a month for the
$15.75.
$15.75
I
a
didn't
month
hear $15.75.
for the three.
That's my,
for the three
that's
slips.
my hearing problem.
And then he'll maintain the insurance, and take responsibility for utilities
And maintenance.
and maintenance. They will be responsible for all maintenance and repairs to the premises except to the extent caused by negligence or intentional wrongful acts.
I underheard you, what you said, I apologize.
I wasn't enunciating correctly.
No, you can hear it.
So do you think you would be able to get this pulled together by our March 10th meeting? Because there's a time constraint on this.
Well, the onus on that rests with his attorney.
Okay.
They were put on notice last week that if we had some sense of a favorable reading today, that they would be moving forward tomorrow with drafting something that our town attorney then could look at and react to.
Just to confirm though, are we good with the rental rate?
Wasn't that something you had said you were gonna dig deeper into?
We,
We did deeper.
we'll dig deeper, you know, that's, we'll take another look at it, another swing at it, and see what we come up with.
Because all those other things have value as well.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so
yes.
they need to get
No
credit for
question.
that as well. So I don't know if we're gonna say that we're okay with the rate per se, but I think we should proceed with finding out what that is and moving in that direction.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
all right. So now we're all satisfied with that. We're gonna move on to the notice to proceed with, the design installation detail for the fuel tanks on the Beaufort waterfront.
Elizabeth told me when I walked in that I was doing most of the talking today. The interview committee that the mayor appointed, interviewed the 4 respondents to the RFQ for design, build, and permitting for the underground fuel storage tanks to support the boat town docks. As a result of those interviews, the #1 firm is IPSV out of Fuquay, Verona. And as a matter of fact, I have a meeting this Friday morning with the owner and their design engineer team. I just, hopefully, this board's okay with staff moving forward with that. And the installation is looking more like a fall event, an October, November event. But, we need to get moving on the design and the permitting aspects here. And in the course of the interviews, it seemed to settle in on the west parking lot as a location, the east being the backup location. Any other sites have been discarded.
And this is for diesel and not gas.
Diesel and gas.
Wasn't the gas, are we still doing the alternate for the gas?
Yeah,
Yes, we're,
Prices and all that.
yes, we're pricing it as an alternate, 24,000 gallons of diesel, 6,000 of gas. The gas, would be an alt bid.
Yeah, and we wouldn't couple it in that custom tank, because there would be no way to have it manufactured and installed by the December 1 deadline. So
Well,
we keep them in separate tanks.
There was also some discussion on, they, from the supplier, that it might be more preferable to have it actually located in a different place than the.
Okay, well, I'm glad that's kind of coming together eventually.
Yes. So basically, just, once again, just a nod that we can proceed with notice to proceed, and we'll be bringing you legal documents forward as quickly as possible.
carry on.
Thank you.
Does this have to be bonded?
So this is a public construction project, so yes, sir.
Yeah.
And they have
Do they
to,
know that?
Yes, it did.
Thank you, Charlie, and thanks to the DWIP committee and everybody involved for moving quite along. January, I won't say we have a whole lot of time left.
We
Knock it out.
don't have any time.
No, we're eating this elephant one bite at a time.
Just know this, it's on my list to have that under contract
Okay.
before the 21st of April.
Oh, okay.
You need to be under contract by the 21st of April. All right, so we've got some staff comments.
Yes, ma'am. I only have one more to add. The RFP for the dock operators is due this Friday, 4 p.m. So far, I'm only going to receive one. Do anticipate another 4 or 5 or more coming in.
Need to get I'd like to put a committee together to review those.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Whatever, committee probably will not meet until late into March, so, you could appoint those at your 10th meeting, do whatever.
Okay.
And with that, Mr. Grady, did you have anything there?
No, sir, I
Okay.
wouldn't dare interfere with the attorney description.
Okay, well, I have 3 staff that do have, items that they'd like to share with you. Start with, engineer Sam Bell.
And thank you for sitting at the table, Sam.
Oh, oops.
Looking at everybody else.
I knew I was gonna say something, but, just want to circle back around on the professional park stormwater study. Received the draft web portal a couple weeks ago. Just wanted to circle back and see if there's any other comments before we go live with it. If you had a chance to take a look at it, I'll keep it open, keep the comments open through tomorrow. If you have any last minute comments, I've received a couple comments from staff about just the wording, some wording, taking off some contact information. Overall, I think it is pretty well laid out. Kind of starts with a little history about the project. It moves down to some interactive maps that show the flooding kind of before and after for the recommended alternative. I think it'll be a great tool. We'll roll it out. This will come about 2 or 3 weeks before the public information session, which we are in the process of scheduling in mid-March. So that'll roll that web portal out. It'll be available before and after the public information session, and keep those public comments open as long as we need to make sure we get adequate public outreach and on those alternatives. And so we plan on rolling out that portal in the next couple of days, and then also sending out some notices to the public for the public information session as soon as we get a firm date on that.
Okay.
How do you do all you're gonna notice?
These letters, I believe, are planning on going out to the neighborhoods in Professional Park, specifically Meeting Street. Is there any? I think we're just thinking specifically Meeting Street right now.
For
Maybe
the letters, but we'll advertise about the meeting, just like we do
Who are the specific letters of invitation?
that neighborhood.
that neighborhood.
How many homeowners would that be?
I'll have to go
Roughly,
count houses, but I think
roughly.
100 roughly.
But I think we should be very sure that we include everybody in the written, as a homeowner, as a written, in writing to them, not count on the website or this type of thing. I think you need to be extraordinarily direct to them.
I have some of those signs left over too. I can put up throughout the neighborhood
I'm talking about a nice personal letter
in letters.
from the mayor,
I think there's about 400 houses total in that community.
Personally signed.
personally signed, with a right hand.
Oh, and they'll never know.
Yeah.
I'm left-handed, so yeah, let's do that.
Wow.
I'm looking forward to that. Any questions on the information session or the web portal?
I just want your comment. I saw that you sent it and I opened it, but I really didn't go through it. So either tonight or tomorrow morning, I'll look at it and I'll let you know either way if I have comments. So I'm sorry for waiting till the last minute, but I appreciate the opportunity to look over it.
RSVP is not one of our best.
That's why I'm. Progression. Very, very straightforward, very good.
Great job. You took all the comments that we had made and put it all into that portal. So that was a really good job. And you've got support of your staff, your friends here to help make any changes. So I want to thank staff for chiming in to help improve that portal information. So I appreciate that. You did great.
Sam, have you had any improvement in the communications with Summit?
Some, yes, they're out there working today. So
Was that?
Have you had any improvement?
You don't say.
communication, yes. Been in contact more regularly with their superintendent, Gene, he's been contacting us at least a weekly basis to give us, street closure updates, and so there has been some improvement there.
Have you heard from the head of the company?
No, haven't heard back from, but that's probably a good
You have
thing.
not?
That's probably a good thing.
That's exciting.
We meet Wednesday.
But we're meeting again Wednesday.
10
So
o'clock Wednesday, right here, Wednesday.
I hope they do just as much construction during that meeting. I'm not gonna ask them to stop.
Yes, sir. The request came about for the board wanting to get your quarterly update on Compass Hotel.
Yes,
I
sir.
believe everyone was given the schedule as well as to the updates specifically that they're looking at least being right now a month ahead of schedule, and that they'll be closing the structure in from the outside, putting siding and so forth. So it would say within the next few weeks, I guess, in March, they'll be primarily working inside of the building. So hopefully that should help reduce.
The neighbors should like that.
The neighbors should hopefully appreciate, hope if
We'll
she
see
can
about that.
I said,
We'll see, we'll see if he does.
I said hope, I did
We'll
not
hear
say
about it if
will.
you don't.
I will. That's what the ultimate goal is.
And do they have a completion date?
Completion date originally was in October, November, but now that they're ahead of schedule, of course, we know how things go towards the last. I'm still anticipating somewhere around October, November.
Okay.
There's usually something that occurs with weather and so forth in summertime, and we always hedge our bets with that.
Okay. Well, once they start working indoors, hopefully the weather won't be an issue then.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Anything else, sir?
No, sir.
Elizabeth?
Thank you, Kyle.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Just a couple comments. I did want to bring to your attention that this past Thursday, I received annexation application for 2303 Highway 70, which is the proposed jail site. So you will see the first part of that process at your March 10th meeting. Any comments on that whatsoever, but.
That'll include, a 3-month process. Accompanying that is sewer allocation. I think comes with that for 300-bed facility. In plan show also the relocation of sheriff's department, 911, and those types of things. Conferred with town attorney last week, and we were originally looking at doing some credits because of the jail structure that would be removed. And, we kind of weighing those credits versus what the ask is for 300 beds. And Eric, I'm gonna let you talk about that because I think your ideas in that regard are right on target.
So now I have to remember what I said to you Friday afternoon. We basically
On a
do
Monday.
the allocation on the 300, that we don't put ourselves in a position in the out years while they're making the transition. To know you, by the way, you have to go tear this building down. Just when they tear the building down, you'll get sewer allocation back.
their thought is they want to keep maybe 10 cells. And they were talking about maybe renovating the building, or maybe tearing the building down, or maybe making a parking lot, maybe this, maybe that. And instead of you having to be, 4 years from now, you being the heavy, and having to go back and say, oh yeah, we're our agreement, yeah, we're agreement. We just assume that when they do whatever they do with it, you know, you'll get sewer allocation freedom. If that makes any sense. Is that fair?
About the only way you could make it legally binding would be through an interlocal agreement, which is certainly perfectly permissible, and we've got a lot of those floating around. The issue is the disconnect between the timing of the initial sewer allocation and what Carter County will ultimately do with that property. And we've heard everything from tear it down for parking to keep some of the cells to renovate it for admin space. So, you know, coming up with an agreement now that forfeits sewer allocation for that building conceivably 4 years in advance, that's a challenge. We can ask for it and go that way. But my suspicion would be that Carter County is not going to want to box themselves into a particular use now. They're going to want to get the new jail built, get it operational, then approach, you know, the use of the existing property. So, I think, you know, I think it's safe to say that they're not going to keep all 100 beds. So there will be some savings there, but there's a big difference between admin space, 10 beds, and a parking lot. So that goes from 0 on up.
This is on, that's it. No.
I do not.
Well, really, the only difference for the sewer there would be if the zoning was such that they duplexes or multi-use or something like that there. Otherwise, if you move that site from a jail to administrative spaces, you probably have less sewer out, probably have less sewer usage, right?
But so long as it's used as a governmental use, the zoning really is inconsequential. So it's really if they change.
Really, if they only add more to it, and keep it as a jail.
Correct.
So
What's the allocation?
Well,
for the 300
that's a good question though, because there is a building there where they kind of did this before. It wasn't a government site, but the old school site. They claimed they asked for less allocation up front because they said they were reusing the school building. In this case, it's 2 separate locations. So I don't know how to do that. But that is what they are doing. They're asking for less allocation based on the fact that they're supposedly getting rid of 100 jail cells. But
isn't the allocation property specific?
property specific?
Yes.
That's
I
a
mean,
good
so
question. Yeah.
where I'm going with that, the school site, that's a wonderful example, but in this case, Carter County has an allocation for the current jail, but then they're going out to build a new one. I mean,
Yeah.
would we allow them to transfer that?
From a logical standpoint, we're going to see the reduction in capacity once it comes offline. The allocation doesn't exist because it's already in the system, and they're talking about a completely different site. So they have
What's
to
the allocation request for the 300 jails?
once they took out the 100, it was about.
No.
I know.
What's the allocation for 300?
I only remember the number minus the 100, which was like 24,000.
But we can't count on that.
But we can't.
So what's the allocation request?
So then it's 224, 24,000 for 200,
So
roughly
roughly
36,000.
36,000. And that property is not in the town or the ETJ.
Is within the
ETJ.
ETJ.
It is within the ETJ.
Yes, sir, yes.
That's why I want to get it.
I would just be keeping it separate, because what if it's sold or if it changes? I have a hard time wrapping my head around the exchange.
That's what we're gonna do is just ask them to submit it with just the 300
Just the
beds
300.
and not take it out some, because it's a different site.
It could be done, but it's not very clean. I mean, my thought, Charlie, the other day was treat the new gel as the new gel. And then whatever happens with the old gel, you know, we'll see in 4 years. And if it was the same site, I think it
Yeah.
probably becomes a lot easier,
Right,
like
right.
Sam mentioned, but.
And there's no allocation for the old jail, it's just whatever it is.
It's already, yeah, it's already.
Whatever it uses, right?
And we're measuring their revenue based upon their water use.
Correct.
And just for clarity, the sewer request would come to you after you actually voted on the annexation. The following item, the same meeting, after you vote on the annexation, then you would have the sewer application before you.
Supposed to be Mayish.
May.
And then you'll get plans for this development that's gonna go out there. I mean, who's paying for the infrastructure and all that fun stuff?
It's a county development project.
Okay.
Yes.
So who's paying for it? I'll give that to them.
That's not your business.
The advertising is-
As long as Beaufort, it is my business, as long as Beaufort's not paying.
They have an RFQ on the street that is due the end of March for a design build for the 300 beds. So what we're trying to do is get out in front of them issuing the contract and at least make you aware that this project is out there and is live.
Okay.
Anything else?
On a lighter note, I received the board retreat summary Friday afternoon, reading through that and making sure everything lines up. It's got 21 pages, making sure all those notes were captured correctly, and I'll send that out to you guys on the review. Just comment on the new layout of the work session. Any feedback on that? Is this better? Is this what you guys were looking for the work session?
Yeah, missing some people at the table.
Well, we can't fit all of the staff at the table, so we kind of just, if the staff was speaking, we had them to the table
Okay.
type of thing.
That's all we had.
So the layout is nice, I like it. As long as we don't have any noise or construction, it's easy.
I hope we have a lot of.
Well, I hope we have one after 4, we can kind of trim it down a little bit, but I guess everybody was able to hear without having mics and things of that nature, so.
What?
And then we're able to still live stream so that our citizens can see it as well, and there's a good audience here. So. Great job.
Thank you.
All right, unless there's any further staff comment,
No, ma'am.
all right, got a motion to on the floor to adjourn, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations.